Now with all our kits, we include very handy instructions. They're all just set on one 2-page spread. In this case, in the spreader bars, we break it down to 4 steps. Okay, so now I have everything laid out, so I'm ready to begin this project. So I got my 6-inch squids and a 9-inch squid ready, handful of 1.7 millimeter crimps. We're going to be using 200-pound test mono, so we know these will fit perfectly. Black chafe gear, a handful of rigging beads. In this case, we're going to just use one metal chafe guard, and that's going to connect to the hook. A couple of egg sinkers, which will help the squid track a little bit and also handle the spacing. And this is an excellent way to add 3 inches of spacing. It saves a lot of time over the entire squid having beads in it. And lastly, this is our very popular tuna hook, the 8705 VMC Dynacut hook. So I have everything ready to go, and now I'm going to begin with step 1 here, which is going to be to attach the 2 flank lines to the spreader bar. So step 1 is really the easiest step, and we're just going to attach the 2 flank lines to the spreader bar. Now this kit comes with pre-cut flank lines. This is also available to buy as a single item, and so they're sized appropriately for a 30-inch spreader bar. And again, this is 200-pound test mono, a 1.7 millimeter aluminum crimp. I'm going to slide the crimp onto the line. It doesn't matter which side you start with. I'm just starting on the closest one to me. Thread the loop over. Now with crimping, I like to have just enough loop, not too much, not too little, and I like just a little bit of mono tagging out on the other side. Now I'm going to crimp this down. Now you'll notice on our crimpers, we have numbers on with the crimping holes. This is 1.7 millimeter, so we're going to go with the 3rd hole, which is 1 millimeter to 2 millimeters. So crimps that fall within that size range is the hole we're going to use. And these are extra long crimps, so each crimp is going to get 3 crimpings, if that's a word, with the crimping tool. And I just make sure my lines space properly. I got my little tag end. Now I'm going to go to the 3rd hole, which is the 1 millimeter to 2 millimeter, again a 1.7 millimeter crimp. And I'm going to get the round part of the crimp and the round part of the hole. Now you'll notice that I'm not starting all the way at the end. I like to have a little bit of an edge that'll end up flanging out. Just going to close the crimpers, and you'll see there's my first crimp. Now as I mentioned a couple of moments ago, these are extra long crimps, which I like for strength. I'm just going to do 3 crimpings and work my way up the sleeve. I'm all done. I'm going to put the crimpers down, and you'll see I have 3 even crimpings across, and then I have the very ends, which there's the edge sort of flanges out. That just prevents the line from cutting on itself. Now this is the flank line, so I'm being a little extra careful, I guess unnecessarily so, just because this isn't going to be load bearing with the fish, but it's just good practice to have perfect crimps all the way through. And so I'm going to repeat the step to add the 2nd flank line. Again, these are pre-cut lengths. Super easy step. Crimp it in. I'm just going to go fast this time. A little bit of a tag end. Going for the middle hole, the 1 to 2 millimeter crimp. Now it's all going to be perfect and easy. Crimp number 1, crimp number 2, and crimp number 3. We've just completed step number 1. We have 2 flank lines attached to the bar. So in step 2, we're going to add the teasers to the flank lines. So we've prepared the squids just by cutting the tips off their noses, just the very tip, just far enough back so you can get the line passed through the squid. And so we're going to slide the first squid on. We're going to start with the nose, obviously, come through the tentacle area. And so I'm going to slide the squid on. I'm going to slide a bead. I'm going to slide a crimp. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm just going to repeat it again. Another squid. another bead, 2, and 3. Now we know from the directions in step 2 that the second squid is going to be the last in this flank line. So at the very end, the last step we're going to do is fold the line over in itself, push it in the crimp sleeve, and we're going to secure this crimp. Now again, third hole down. This is a 1.7 millimeter crimp. Crimp 1, crimp 2, and crimp 3. Evenly spaced, the little edge is flanged on the end. So that's the first squid, or the second squid I should say. Now the instructions also say this first squid should be 6 inches from the crimp here. And I can do a quick estimate here because these are 6-inch bulb squids. So we know if we lay the squid 1 full body length, that's 6 inches. I'm always looking for quick and easy tricks, and that's my favorite one for building the spreader bars. Now it doesn't matter too much, just as long as the squids are in balance, but keeping the same measurements for both sides is just an easy way to do that. And so I got that crimp in there. You'll notice there's the bead. That's going to prevent the squid from sliding through the crimp. Pull it through, and there you have it. So we just built our first flank line. Okay, so now I'm going to repeat the same very steps for the first flank line for the second flank line. Okay, time for step 3, which is to complete the hub portion of the spreader bar. So I have the pre-cut center line, which we know is about 6 feet in length, and I'm going to slide that through the hub of the bar to create the leader portion. But before doing so, I'm going to add a crimp sleeve and a bead. And the instructions say you want to have 9 inches of line on the front end of the spreader bar. So for quick and easy reference, I'm just going to take my 9-inch squid and line it up. So I have 9 inches of line sticking out from this crimp, just as we've done before with all the crimps, not all the way to the edge, close to the edge. Now close it down, and the last crimp. So there's the center portion. Now, I was doing that one-handed for the demonstration of the camera. I'm just going to hit that one last time with 2 hands. Is what I recommend, and close that tight. So that is a perfect crimp. Got 9 inches of line passing through it. And that's why I like to space things in increments of 6 inches, because if you don't have a ruler handy, you can use a squid, which is a great trick when you're on the boat, by the way, bringing in the field. So now that we have the crimp and the bead, we're going to send that line right through the hub, and you can see it's going to stop on that bead that we just put in. And now we're going to take a 6-inch squid, slide it on. Now this is a nice little modification of the spreader bar that a pro staffer brought to our attention. And this squid's going to help this bar troll more smoothly in the water. And it's more of a, an abbreviated angle. And so this will help the bar swim in calmer seas, or if you don't have outriggers, it'll help improve the swimming action. That's why we put this lead squid here. Now the last step is to put the leader connection here. It's a crimp, a piece of the black tubing chafe gear that we provided. I close it. Create that nice loop. A little bit of a tag end. So now we have the center hub portion of the bar done. You're 3/4 of the way done here. So now we just need to add the rest of the center line, and we'll be in business. Two-handed crimp, two-handed crimp. All right, so in step number 4, we're going to complete the center line. And so it's just a similar process to the flank lines, just more baits. So we've got bait number 1. So it goes bait, bead, crimp. bead, crimp. Now I like to just do it all in one step here. And so the second bait, bead, crimp, and the third bait, bead, and crimp. Now it's very important to pay attention to this stage, because if you make a mistake, you got to start from scratch. You got to go all the way back to the beginning of step 3. So you just want to be careful to make sure you line it all up properly. So after the hub, you've got a bait, bead, crimp, another bait, bead, crimp, and lastly a bait, bead, crimp. So now I have my 3 teasers that are behind the spreader bar threaded on the line, and we're going to crimp them in place. Now again, we're going to use the bulb squid as a handy measuring tool. These are 6-inch squids. So in this case, we're going to use the spacing of 6 inches apart, because we're going to use the length of the body as a measuring tool. So in this case, here's the crimp, the first one. And I'm going to pull this squid back. So we're basically spacing every 2 squid bodies. And so you can understand it as 6 inches from the bottom of the squid, from where you begin your crimp. Or you can view it as crimps are 12 inches apart if you have a ruler. But if you're in the field, I always like to use the bodies as a spacer. You don't have to worry about it. And so this last one, so this is all the way sitting on the crimp. I'm going to take this last one, get my spacing, and that's my last teaser. Now before I connect this last crimp, on the center line, we're going to take a moment to add black tubing chafe gear and the high quality ball bearing swivel we included. Going to make sure our measurement's still intact. Now in this case we have a little excess line, so we're just going to shorten it a little so it's easier to work with. We're going to make sure our measurement's correct again. We're going to thread this through, pulling it all the way. So you have the chafe gear, but the the ball bearing swivel inside it. Again, we're going to cut out a little more excess line. Going to do crimp 1, crimp 2, and crimp 3. So essentially we're adding a snap swivel behind the last squid, and that will complete your center line. Now the reason why I put this swivel in, it'll make it easier for changing out the stinger and catching multiple fish in an afternoon or a morning. This swivel will allow you to easily interchange the lure. And now making your stinger bait's pretty easy. So you'll start with the chafe gear. Very simple step. Crimp 1, crimp 2, crimp 3. Going to cut the nose of my 9-inch squid. Going to slide that through. We're getting close. So now the next step is, I know from experience, you want 4 beads. 1, 2, 3, 4 beads, 2 1-ounce egg sinkers. this chafe tube, which lengthens the lifespan of the leader on the stinger line, but also makes for a very quick and easy spacer. We're going to put our crimp on. And I like to use the metal chafe gear for hooks and the black tubing chafe gear for swivel connections. This is my VMC 8705 tuna hook. There's plenty of good tuna hooks out there, but this is the one that's included in the kit. And my personal favorite. The third line, crimp 1, crimp 2, and crimp 3. I think, my friends, we have completed the bar essentially. So you can see the configuration. You can see I've got the hook starting from right to left. I got the hook, the metal chafe gear, this glow soft chafe strip, and that's both soft and protective, but it also adds for very quick and easy spacing. Now I have the 2 egg sinkers up forward, and those are going to sit relatively far up inside the nose of the bait and help it swim properly. And then the last step is I have 4 little glow beads, because I know from experience just those 4 little beads will space everything out just perfectly. So when the bait's all seated in place, that hook's about 1/4 of an inch above the skirt. You know, I find that placement's the best one as far as hookups go. For the final step, going to connect it to the swivel, and you're in business. So when this gets chewed up a little bit, you just take it off, you pop a new one on. And you'll have a very well-built spreader bar in your hands, and you'll have the knowledge to build all your future bars. But most importantly, if something goes wrong when you're on the water, you'll now literally have the tools and the parts to fix anything at sea.